when the photons or the wavelengths of light, there's less redirection.
You're completely thinking out of box because
so there's a lack of knowledge of how to even use it. Transport internet and devices like my jacket, the computer, still some haze that you can see. It's just
Hi everybody, welcome back. This is hasinilakshminarayanan here, founder of The First Step, and this is the First Step YouTube channel where I am interviewing young achievers in also association with the CIT, Chennai Institute of Technology, number 2 college in Tamil Nadu. And today as our guest, we have a 16 years old who is very much inspired in material science and nanotechnology, and he currently is doing a research, and his story is very inspirational, so I can't wait to hear from him. So let's all welcome Carlos together, shall we? Hello.
hello audience.
What kind of role do you play in the Mind magazine? That's my first question.
So the role that I play in my magazines, I'm an executive board director. So essentially what that means is I review and edit submissions like scientific papers or articles from students from grades 6 to 12, or just basically any kid in general who is interested in STEAM, which is science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics, for the startup magazine called Mind Magazine. And we are trying to sort of diversify STEAM research and basically STEAM interest by students themselves, rather than just having like scientists or more professionals having to do it. We want to give the stage to children to sort of have their voices heard when it comes to certain issues that they're passionate about, like environmental science, climate change, or just even their own interest in general.
That's great. I mean, you're really great, and Mind magazine. You have written about 70 plus nano stories. So how do you collect and from where do you get information?
So in terms of how I collect the information, it is essentially, well, I guess I could tell a little bit about what the nano stories is in the first place. So it's essentially basically a collection of research that I have been doing for a nanomaterial that is called aerogel. So if I had to give like a one-liner on aerogel, it is the world's lightest solid at 99.8% air by volume. However, there are many, you could say, flavors of aerogel. There is the silica aerogel, which is the classic blue aerogel. And then there's the carbon aerogels, which are purely made out of out of carbon atoms. And then there's the graphene aerogels, something similar to it. And then there's more like polymer aerogels. That's just a brief example. So with these 70 plus nanostories, it is basically breaking down this giant nanomaterial into its most fundamental properties, where I discuss about these properties. And what happens what if we change them? Or we could say, okay, what if we enhance this property, but we let this one go? That's just a brief examples. In terms of that, where I get the information is actually pretty simple. I mostly get it from Khan Academy, YouTube, which are my two biggest resources, especially when I need help in my schoolwork. I go there, sort of help me out with any other schoolwork. So those are the two biggest areas that I would go. But in terms of other resources that I would definitely use, I would go to college textbooks that I have here with me, to the right of me, which is where I get most of like the math and physics from, because at least for me, since I have access to the books, I don't see why I can't use them. So I think it's just knowing how to sort the good and the bad information. And that's where I find out, okay, this is something that my readers should read. And the final part that I also want to talk about the nano stories is this is actually something that I'm considering turning into a book, a children's book, in terms of sort of give a brief introduction to what is nanotechnology and what is nanomaterials. So for me, I want to do this. I want to make the nano stories public. So if people want something they want to hear, then they will notify me rather than just once the book's published, they're going to tell me I don't like this book because it doesn't have this and this and this. But if I do it publicly, I can already change it directly rather than just having to wait 6-7 months to tell me.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I mean, what you said right now is right. But then apart from that, I never knew before I read, I mean, your LinkedIn profile that there was a subject like this. And I mean, find it very interesting as well. And I will now move on to the third one. You currently are doing a research, right? So I request you to tell us about that.
So a little bit of the research that I'm currently doing is looking at how do we remove haze, or you could say blurriness, from transparent aerogels. The transparent aerogels are basically a silica-based aerogel that you can basically clearly see the other side. Think of it like enhanced glass, for example. And although glass is pretty transparent, there is still some haze that you can see. It's just so low that, well, you don't even notice it. So with this transparent aerogel that I've been researching is how do we enhance the properties in the particles, in that network of particles, so that most of the light just goes directly transmit through the aerogel rather than scatter around. Because when the photons or the wavelengths of light hit the aerogel particles, they either get absorbed by the particles or they scatter. Scattering causes this haze or blurriness that you see, especially like in fog or some thick scattering area. You can think of like fog. That's the blurriness because all those particles are being scattered around, but the photons are being scattered around. So what I found out was this: that if we decrease the size of the particles, we also depend less on the thickness of the aerogel. Because most aerogels, you might see a photo of them being like this big, but with so much thickness, that's because you have to rely on basically the size of the particles to have this amount of thickness. To reduce the size, you don't have to depend that much on how thick it is, and that way you can have more of direct transmittance because there's less redirection or basically scattering of all this light that is coming around. The second thing is also what if we increase the what if we decrease the wavelengths of light that are going into the aerogel? So instead of doing the visible light, which everyone can see, what if we go to the ultraviolet where it's pretty much invisible? The transparency or the light that could potentially get absorbed isn't visible to our eyes. That way you reduce the transparency.
I mean, you're completely thinking out of box. So you are, I mean, request you to tell about the project which you're doing for the UN, which also involves literacy to women and girls in semi-Uganda.
Definitely. So this was actually part of a global challenge from the program that I was currently in called the Knowledge Society. And what we decided to do was we were partnering with the United Nations on this global challenge. So for us, it wasn't just me who was on this team. It was a couple of other people. I guess I couldn't name them by just their names. So ours, Leona and Io. And what we decided to do was looking more into Uganda, and we found out our solution that we sent to our deck to someone who has connections to the UN. And basically the title essentially was Bringing Digital Access and Literacy to Women and Girls in Semi-Rural Uganda through Wi-Fi buses.
Okay.
Now, but why do that? Why do that in Uganda? So we have to understand sort of what the big problem is. So in a nutshell, the problem is expansion. There's a lack of expansion where the internet subscriptions have increased by 12%, but the amount of people with mobile phones has gone up 5%. So that means, okay, there's a little bit of advantage there, but there is gender equality. where almost 20%, I think it's around 20%, is less women with the lack of technology and internet access comparison to the males. And also the difference between the male and female literacy is, I think, a little under 50%, which doesn't really sound a lot, but if you add the entire population of Uganda, it really is. And then there's the accessibility to the internet, where this literacy rate and technology rate is low in Uganda in terms of accessibility, but not to mention the over the top taxes that they pay in Uganda. And the internet crisis specifically is about 1 in 10 women uses the internet. But also there's a lack of knowledge of how to even use it in Uganda, which is kind of a big issue considering if you do have a phone and you don't know how to use it. But around only 18% of females actually have the smartphone, but only 1 million out of 39 million Ugandans have access to the computer. So it's mostly a mobile phone than a computer. It's also cost, social norms, and accessibility and usefulness that most people kind of that basically don't have the knowledge or awareness behind it. So what we decided to do was, okay, well, if the majority of people do have phones, maybe it's just like the lack of knowledge using the phone. What we said is, why not use mobile internet hubs, device libraries, and a learning centric app? So essentially what that means is we transport internet and devices on a bus. So all the devices will be stored in the bus with Wi-Fi. So that way you can take your education with, rather than just having to go somewhere at a school and then just having to be there, but you can just take it wherever you want digitally. If most people do have phones, then most people do have phones, then all we have to do is teach them, okay, how does it work? But also you need internet in order to use it. So what we did is, in terms of, okay, how do we use the phone? We in our deck, we thought of device libraries and programs. So we basically can sort of give this wide range of literacy and educational apps on this phone to target specific people with different skills and according to their demographic. Again, that's just an overview of this entire project that we.
Okay, I mean, that sounds very interesting and fun. And I, to be fair and honest, that I didn't know much about material science, nanotechnology, and stuff back then. But after interacting, I do know a little bit of it, but now would like to explore more. So, I mean, one important question from my side to you right now is like, how did you get inspired on material science and nanotechnology? And is there any story behind it?
That's actually a good question. So I actually got interested. I did my first my first passion wasn't actually material science and nanotech, actually space technology. I mean, if you can check from my Zoom background, there's a telescope up there. That's the first thing I ever had. But when I realized that what happens in space is you get all this cosmic radiation and basically all these free radicals, I realized I don't want that to happen to me. So I said, I think I might have to let it go. So I kind of was just like, the average person until COVID struck. And I realized like I have to make a complete change to myself. Like if you think about it, this is the once in a lifetime opportunity, like make the complete 180 turn of yourself. But I just didn't know where to start. But towards the end of the year, there was a link from my current science teacher at the time, Dr. Gonzalez, and she sent me this link to say, do you want to go to like this SpaceX talk with Ray Mastrapa, partnered with the Knowledge Society? And when I went there, I kind of just went off when it came to like the discussion time. So one of the co-founders sent an email saying, "Are you interested in the program?" So I said, "Why not? Like there's really nothing to lose. We're in a pandemic. I might as well use the time wisely." And when I did get in, I was like, "Okay, so this is going to be interesting." So as I went through the program, I realized that I was kind of slowly losing interest because I realized that there wasn't really something I could definitely apply myself to. something that I found interesting until I came across a TEDx video that I think was titled, yeah, it was titled "Discover the Materials of the Future in 30 Seconds or Less." And the guy who presented it had so much enthusiasm and brought like very good examples. So for me, it was like, hey, when I realized like, okay, the materials of the future, that's when I developed this sort of philosophy. If I'm thinking about it, is if you think about it, the whole world's made out of materials, like my jacket, the computer, um, like the chair, the dining table. Everything's made out of materials, and they all carry certain properties. But if you change the properties, you basically created a new material with new properties. But how can we 10x current properties or 10 times the current properties? That's the materials of the future. So I realized, okay, I Googled materials of the future and it came out all a long list. So I just took like 5 minutes to look at it. And then when I found aerogel, it was this blue silica aerogel. So I looked at it and it looks, okay, it's blue, it looks cool. So I dove in a little bit more, went on YouTube and just like searched it up a little bit more. And when I realized like, oh, like God, it's actually that powerful because it can be used in many applications like fusion or to pick up oil spills or space technology, which it's already being used. But it is so light that you can sort of, make it by the truckload if you make a high surface area to volume ratio, which basically means very thin but very wide aerogel.
Okay.
So it insulates as much as it can with just so little thickness. So I realized I want to continue doing this because, if we enhance materials, we basically enhance everything that we do. Everything's made out of materials. So I think with that philosophy, I realized, okay, let's keep going. And I think what I also liked about material science and nanotech is that it combined many aspects of what we live in today rather than just going very specific into one. What I mean is material science is a combination of physics, math, and chemistry. However you want to go, that is totally up to you, depending on the material that you want to research, but it does combine all three. Maybe not at a very deep level, like maybe if you were to do electrical engineering or pure mathematics, but it does combine all three aspects. And I think that's what I like about it the most. You don't really go that deep into one of those three, but you get to apply all three in one go. And I think that's what I like.
Okay. Okay. I
It
mean,
really teaches
that's
you something about the world.
interesting to hear, as well as a very inspirational story, because I too started off in the pandemic, as I was like very bored at some point,
Mm-hmm.
and and I made use of my time interviewing children because that's, I feel such kind of happiness doing it, and hope you do while researching about nanotechnology and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you did mention about the Knowledge Society. I knew about it as I read the profile, but people, would you like to tell what the Nano Knowledge Society is about?
Mm. So definitely. So if I had to give a one-liner on what the Knowledge Society is, it basically trains kids around the ages 13 to 17 on solving the world's biggest problems using emerging technology. So
Okay.
essentially what you can do is basically what happens here is we have these directors, we have directors, we have our mentors, and then we have our focuses, which is just basically what technology are you most interested in. And you basically go deep diving and then you realize, okay, what are the solutions, current solutions that we have? What are the world's biggest problems that this technology can actually help leverage, solve it? And then if you see something that has potential, you'd probably either seek out making a startup or maybe talking to more researchers and consultants about it. So, but then again, that one liner is kind of already um,
Yeah,
it's kind of it's just sort of basically it trains
yeah, it
kids
did. Yeah,
from
that
middle
was
school, high
absolutely
school to
fine.
solve big problems.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that is why I guess, you started your
Yeah,
journey.
yeah, because I realized like
Right.
with COVID is this is a big problem. Like I want to try and like contribute because I mean like you don't just want to sit here and just wait because there aren't enough smart people working on these problems, which is why we're stuck here longer. Is most people aren't willing to step up to the challenge. I realize like, well, I mean, I want to step up. Like I think it's time, because eventually there will come a time when you have to step to the real world and put yourself
Yeah.
in the shoes. It's better to start now than having to wait later and let it smack you in the face. So I think that's get as much exposure as you can as early as you
But it's just amazing you only being like 15, thinking out of the box, and you would like to take an initiative just to move forward. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, in my words, how I express it is just like that. And how do you see yourself in the next 5 years? Because you would have definitely planned.
So at least, so for me, in the next 5 years, I see myself in terms of going more into research for either one or two options. It's on the transparent aerogels, because I think the more transparent we have, we can actually apply it to future Mars homes. Maybe replace even windows entirely. And then the next one is probably on like solar cells for transparency, where we just don't want like all that extra energy to just fly away from the solar cell that radiates away. That's the first section of transparent aerogels. The second one is perhaps possibly engineering a new type of material that can capture carbon dioxide, because I realized that maybe there's a way we can change the properties in the aerogel, sort of make it absorb other elements, because certain aerogels can absorb water, some of them can absorb oil, some of them can absorb light. I don't see, can it absorb another gas? If that is possible, then basically, if we can increase the aerogel, like I mentioned, decrease the thickness, and that decrease the thickness, which also means decreasing the particle size. But decreasing the particle size also makes also only allows it for like smaller and smaller wavelengths of light, like ultraviolet light, sort of go in and scatter. Um, and essentially, if that does happen, with this potential aerogel that can absorb carbon dioxide, I think basically we can have a bigger chance at trying to sort of absorb all this carbon dioxide and fix this carbon problem. How much? How much of it can it impact? I really don't know, because then again, I can't see the future. But if I would say where I be, it'd probably be one of those two sectors.
I mean, it's already, you've taken an initiative and you've grown so far in just about 10 months, I believe. So in 5 years you will be in like such an high position, according to my perspective. But then all the best, because expect the unexpected. As for me as well, I did not know that I will be in such a position, but here I am today. So all the best. But then one more other question, which according to me is gonna be an important question. Every young achiever, I mean, the term which I would like to use, they might have faced challenges and hurdles. And my question to you is, have you faced any challenges and hurdles thus far? If so, how did you overcome it?
Hmm. So I'm gonna just say this because it kind of ties into how I handle my failures. So I love sports so much. So I'm currently playing high school varsity soccer right now, and I constantly do a lot of like weights and stuff, or like in my home gym outside.
Okay.
So that's one thing I used to like in terms of handling my failures is physical exertion, because I don't know, for me, it's like physical exertion is like the most underrated therapy. You actually feel so good once you're done. And all that stress, all that pain goes away, and you actually can think with a clear head. You think clearly, you're not all over the place, like you're not screaming, you're not panicking because of something. That's one option. The second option for me is, okay, actually assess, where is your problem coming from? Is it the problem or is it the outcome? Because certain things aren't problems; those were outcomes of your actions. It's kind of like thinking of the world's hardest problems is like climate change, poverty. Those aren't problems; those were outcomes. But what are we doing that's causing us to have this outcome? That's where the problem lies within. So you have to think. So the first thing I think is this a problem? Is this my problem, or is this the outcome? um, is this the outcome? And once I identify that, then I try and then what I think is, okay, what were the actions that led me to this place? Like where you can't turn back. And once I find that out, I think, okay, what can I do to sort of reverse this, if I even can? If I can't, then I have to find a way to sort of get out of the rabbit hole that I'm currently. So that one takes a little bit more mental strength, but that's like I use that when my mind's in a clear state. But when I'm in a panic state, it's more physical exertion, because at least for me is I kind of been doing that for the majority of my time in terms of sports. So I don't know, it's just kind of sort of programmed in physical
Okay.
exertion if I'm in those intense moments. So I think that's my two best ways of handling stress or any
Great,
failures
great.
that I have.
Great, because whenever you do something which you like, you're definitely going to feel happy, and
Yeah.
whatever is going to be in your
Yeah,
mind, you're just
do
going to
things
feel
that you're
happy.
happy, and then you won't need someone to tell you to do it. You just automatically do it, and you actually feel much better rather
Yeah,
than just having to be forced to do something.
absolutely right. And moving on to the last question, which is what are your future plans and your dream?
So at least in my future me is I want, in terms of since I'm a junior or in 11th grader, so I have 1 year before. So basically, I have 1 year left in high school before it's time to go to college. At least for me, it is. I've been looking more into the University of Oxford. I'm considering on like sort of applying there, which is University of Oxford is in the UK, or in say in the United Kingdom. So I'm actually considering in like trying to cold email or cold call some of the material science undergraduates to learn a little bit more about okay what goes behind there to make sure
Okay.
that okay this is somewhere I actually want to apply. But in terms of like my future plans, I would probably either consider one just take either a gap year, just like to travel around, because after COVID, I think everyone needs a break. As much as I love material science and nanotech, cannot do this 24/7. It really, kind of messes with your head. Even though like, yes, these are problems you want to solve, every man needs a break. Every person needs a break. So it would either be a gap year or I would continue to do this research. If I know I'm at a climax, then yes, go all the way and then take your break. Because as I mentioned, everyone needs time of tranquility and relaxation.
Yeah, of course, everyone needs a break after COVID, even though this COVID was a break. Yeah.
Yeah.
We are almost done, and thank you so much for accepting the invitation, first of all, and being here. And I had great time interacting with you as well, and I learned a lot about both material science and nanotechnology. People watching, if you like this video, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and comment down below if you have any suggestions or feedbacks for me. Also, don't forget to turn on your post notifications because you don't have to miss another video. Until then, this is Carlos and Hasini signing off here. Bye bye. I'll see you.